this food revolution should not just be coming from chefs or celebrity chefs or chefs that you see in media. It has to be coming from us, the normal people, everyday people who had this awakening about food. It starts from us. It starts from each and everyone, everyday people who love to cook.
Okay, so I am blessed and very thankful to have my very first official guest on Foodball. We are joined by Wish Ronquillo Peacocke, also known as @WishBliz on Twitter. She describes herself as a semi-retired techie, indie author, poet, and podcaster. So, Wish, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Zach, for having me as your first guest. This is wow, this is I will try my best. I've been in the innovation and tech industry, helping startups and VCs to build these businesses from zero to hero, from idea to execution to launch. Once they reach a certain point, I could leave. Hopefully, they're successful, but most of them are. And now I'm semi-retired, left the tech industry, and just focusing on more on my creative endeavors, pretty much.
Awesome. And where are you located right now?
I'm in Singapore right now. I just moved from Australia 6 months ago.
Awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
So I know we kind of got to talking over Twitter about food, which is why I kind of reached out. So that's why I invited you on to talk and get a international perspective. I know as a white guy, I'm the last person most people want to hear from about food. So I like to try to bring more cultured and more intelligent people than myself on to talk about it. So if you're ready, we can jump right into my standard questions and we'll kind of go from there.
Surely.
Awesome. So first thing, what are your top 5 spices?
That's very difficult because a lot of spices are really the backbone of a lot of the food that I cook. But okay, the top 5 probably would be peppercorns are very important. I've got, let's say, 5 different types of peppercorns in my kitchen.
Oh, wow.
And yes, especially like what I really, really love right now is the kampot pepper from Cambodia. It really has a different spice to it. So they're very important to me. And then chilies, different types of spices like peperoncino is very important in my kitchen. Let's say garlic. I can't live without garlic. I can't. Yes, there are people who can't take garlic, and I'm mind blown by that. And what else? Oregano, very important too. And something as mild but gorgeous and a little bit rare, saffron would be the 5th one.
Saffron is amazing and fascinating and terrifying to me just because of the stories behind it and the places that it's harvested and how it's harvested. I will probably be going into that more in depth on a spice episode that I do in the future, but suffice to say, if you've never cooked with saffron, it is worth every penny.
Yes, absolutely, because it's really delicate, but at the same time, like what you said, it's hard to acquire pretty much where they grow, and per flower would only have 1 or 2. So it's really, you have to treat it with respect.
Absolutely.
When it comes to, yeah.
Absolutely. So if you could only have 5 things in your whole pantry, what would those be?
This is another difficult thing when you're really like cooking.
Yeah, it's like the desert. It's the desert island question. You think you're prepared, and then when the time comes, you kind of
Yeah, so I'm gonna go for very basic things here, but you can make so many different stuff. I'll go for salt. I can't live without salt.
Sure.
Flour, yeah. Um, Even just like the plain flour, I'll be happy with that.
So like wheat flour.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. The real wheat flour from discovered from the ancient days. Let's go for that.
Okay.
And then, since I'm Filipino, rice is very important to us. So rice,
Okay.
and
Does Filipino cooking use any particular kind of rice, like variety?
it's just pretty much the plain white rice.
Okay. Like a short
Um,
grain.
yes, short grain. We've got long grain. It really depends on the region where they're being grown.
Okay.
But nowadays as well, we import a lot from Thailand, which is the Thai hom mali rice.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's the fragrant one. And I love that one pretty much. And of course, there's basmati, whatever. But any rice you can give me, I could cook it. So I'm just happy to have it. And then let's say sugar and olive oil. I love olive oil so much that we already now have. Since 2013, we acquired the land in New Zealand. We have 300 trees, and we make artisanal olive oil, not for sale, but
Oh,
for
really? So
friends and family.
you own an olive grove?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
yes.
Okay.
You're invited to have a harvest. It's normally early May, but this year we're not going to harvest because logistically speaking, it's very difficult because of the pandemic.
Sure.
I'm very sad about it because all the olives are dropping right now.
Mm,
They got ripe a month early for the first time.
mm.
But yeah, that's why. So those are the five.
Okay. Well, it'll be a good smorgasbord for I think they have squirrels in New Zealand, but I'm sure they like to eat those. I
Oh
could be
yeah.
completely wrong. I have no idea.
It's mostly in our land, mostly wild pigs, but
Oh, okay.
uh, yeah, wild pigs. But apparently, in the past 2 years, the government culled them because it's
Mm,
an invasive species,
okay.
and we're trying to bring back more of the local animals in. So there are lots of wood pigeons who would eat them, different types of birds. Yeah, so those are the ones who would eat them.
I would assume that those hogs eating a diet of olives would taste amazing.
Absolutely. So we used to hunt for some of them because again the population, you have to control the population.
Mhm.
So our neighbors are the eco village. They would normally hunt for them at a certain amount per year, and then they put them in the freezer. And then when we visit back, we get a leg and we roast them in
Mm.
full. It's delicious. And I love wild hogs, wild boar. It's just delicious.
I've never tried it. I've seen it frozen in one of our local supermarkets here that's kind of on the high end.
Mm.
I've never cooked game, but it's on my
Oh.
list to try. My family in rural southern Illinois would go and
Mhm.
hunt elk out in Colorado by the
Wow.
Rockies, and we would always have like an elk roast at
Mm.
Thanksgiving that was amazing. But I've never quite gotten there to the cooking game thing. And on moving on to that too. What is
Mhm.
your go-to dish other than wild hog ham? What's your go-to dish that you cook?
Oh, damn. I also have a lot of go-to dishes depending on what type of cuisine. But yes, just recently I just did another kick-ass paella. I really
Mm.
make good paella. Yep.
Do you have a paella?
Paella pan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have five different kinds in sizes of paella pan.
Well, see, and that's hardcore. That's how I know you're legit. Is because you not only have the one, you have five different for whatever you're going to put together. And I know I talk a lot of smack about Jamie Oliver And
Mm-hmm.
I know he's gotten in trouble before for putting things in paella that don't belong in paella.
Mm,
I think it was chorizo. Like he put chorizo in a paella, and um,
yeah.
the paella crowd were very upset with him about that. So, have you ever done anything wild with your paella?
Yeah, so that's another thing. So, Philippines was conquered by the Spaniards for almost 400 years. So we have our own version of paella. It's still called paella valenciana, where where paella originated from, but it's completely different. I don't
Hmm.
cook it Filipino way. I try to cook it closer to Valencia version, but Madrileño just recently told me when I posted it on, I posted the paella on Instagram saying that that's not paella. You
Hmm.
can't please everybody when it comes to this.
Sure.
Sometimes I would add in like langoustine, and I would take away the clams or the mussels out. So it really depends on what I could get
Sure.
in the yeah, in the seafood market, what's good there. So there are different versions and you just need to do it. I can't be authentic because ultimately the Valencianas would tell you it's in their water. So
Really?
yes, they would tell you that. And so you can't really replicate the real thing. So if someone would get a flack for adding string beans there or extra bell pepper, you can't. It's all about the flavor as well, and in their own version at your home. It's your instinct, what you can put there extra that everybody would enjoy. Ultimately, you cook to enjoy food,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think there can be the way that I look at things like paella and most non-white cuisine is you have to I look at it like when I learned photography is you have to know the
Mm,
rules in order to break the rules. So
absolutely.
you have to make I feel like you don't have to. You should
Mm,
make an honest attempt at authenticity and then
yes.
fill in, don't make paella with like, I don't know, cauliflower rice and
Yeah.
pork chops and then like, figs and then call it paella. That's not
Yes.
paella at that point. You've not even made an
Yes.
honest attempt. But if you make an honest attempt and
Yes.
like you said, what you have fresh and available to you rather than I have to use mussels, so I'm going to get these pre-frozen processed mussels because I have to have mussels, then I feel like at that point you're sacrificing the quality in chasing authenticity.
Absolutely. Yes. You do what you can. And yes, you respect the origins of what you cook ultimately.
Absolutely. So, other than your paella pans, what is the most important item in your kitchen?
Oh gosh. So my commercial grade stove. So when we moved back to Singapore, we realized we don't have a stove. So my hubby decided to buy us a commercial grade stove, the one that you will really see in commercial
Mm,
restaurants.
big fire.
Yes, big fire. And at first, I was so terrified of it. And now I'm using it way more than my husband does. I love it. That's very important to me now. It's kick-ass. It's really different when you're cooking with gas, pretty
Absolutely.
much.
This is the
Mm.
house that we live in here in Illinois. This is the first time since I was a child that I've had a gas stove to cook on.
Mm.
Living single and going to college, I was always have we always had electric, and I
Right.
hated it because cooking on electric is awful.
Yes.
So I'm so excited because now I can buy a wok and I can use a wok and I can roast
Yes.
peppers inside and I can make toasted marshmallows and
Oh,
all this other good stuff. And that's I think you're very key. Like that is a foundational kind of thing that if
yeah.
it's hard to make substitutions for flame, for fire, as far as
Yes.
cooking, I think.
Totally.
And another interesting substitution, one of my favorite topics, but I feel like it sets the line between food people and non-food people. What do you think of
Sure.
umami?
I love umami, and what's beautiful about umami is that it's one of the it's the youngest taste that's ever discovered, right, in the early 1900s in Japan. And I love it so much that I named my cat Umami.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes, so that's I love the complexity of it. It really adds extra flair to any dish. I try to cook more authentic Japanese at home,
Okay,
and that's always a building block. Umami is always a building block of some of my cooking, pretty much.
sure. What are your thoughts on MSG then?
So the funny thing is, I grew up with it, and then in the probably late 90s, it looks like they said it's dangerous, don't do it, so we stopped. So in my 20s onwards, you're like you think that it's not good for you, but of course you still eat it, with especially at Chinese restaurants. And now there are more that we know about MSG. It's really not that bad. And I always believe that a lot of these ingredients, you just needed to really balance on how you use them. If you use them every day, if you use sugar, so much sugar every day, then that's not good either. So it's just taking, well, it's like figuratively, it's like taking everything with a grain of salt with
Hmm.
all the information that you have. And so yeah, for me, I will retry again to use MSG in my cooking, just some for some things that I cook, especially when you cook in a wok.
Hmm.
I think it's important for the glossiness, and it really still adds flavor too. How about you?
I agree. I caught Uncle Roger, Nigel Ng. I don't know if you've seen
Mm-hmm.
his YouTube series.
A few, yes.
It's for those of the audience who don't know of Uncle Roger, please look him up on YouTube. He is hysterical. And also, I read today in his NPR interview, there
Mm,
is some mixed feelings with him about him within the Asian American and East Asian community in England, where he's from,
mm-hmm.
about like Asian stereotyping and MSG hatred among
Right.
non-Asians being kind of like a dog whistle of racism toward Asian people, which is
Mm,
part of why I like to support it. I like to support MSG because I think like
mm,
I was raised by baby boomers, the American
right.
generation that was out of World War II, and
Yes.
I feel like that was when Chinese restaurant syndrome kind of started, and they used it as an excuse to be racist. And now I
Mm,
think Nigel Ng has started that conversation back up again and saying MSG is not bad. You know,
yes.
using your advertisements to say we don't have MSG. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to use it, but using
Mm,
it doesn't make you evil, and it doesn't mean you're
yes.
trying to poison people. So I bought a like 1 pound bag of it, which is more than I will
Nice.
ever use. But I put it in a little
Yes.
container by the stop. And when I make fried rice, when I make a stir fry,
Mm,
I'll right at the end I'll hit it with just a little bit, and
perfect.
I can tell just a smidge right at the end. If you've seasoned everything else fine, it does take it to a whole nother kind of level of umami. And having read the
Yes.
research and done, I'm using fish sauce, I'm using Parmesan,
Mm,
I'm using the natural sources, so I know the rules.
yes.
But sometimes if I'm in a rush, and I don't have the fish sauce, if I'm out or whatever, like I'll put a little MSG and I don't feel bad about it. It's not a crime.
No.
I don't, I don't, I'm sure, I hope you listened to my episode about the rules.
Yes,
But
I
because like
did.
I gave myself an out with rule number 6. I said, know your food. So
Yeah.
I know what umami is. I know how to put it in there. But if I can't or won't, I cheat, and I'll admit it. It's cheating. It's a little cheating to put MSG in it. But it's more important for me to have the umami and have that in the dish than be virtuous and like not have cheating and not have that in there.
Yeah, but like the cheating part, it's really more of an instinct. I don't really call it cheating. It's an instinct, whatever you put in there. So like what you were saying about recipe versus, just not using a recipe. It's all about when you're comfortable with cooking already, you don't actually need to measure anything. It's you go by instinct. So when you use different ingredients that sometimes some people would say, oh, you can't mix those. Well, just wait and see, because I know these flavors could be combined. So it's really that. Like, you know the rules and now you can break it. So it's not
Exactly.
really cheating. You're using your instinct to provide flavor to what you're cooking.
Yeah. Well, I feel much better about myself now. Thank you. So on that same kind of note then, like what does, I talk a lot about real food. I
Mm.
hashtag it on Twitter and Instagram probably more often than I need to. But what does real food, like what is that phrase? What does that mean to you?
For me, it's as simple as these real food is honest. So you're giving respect to the ingredients that you have. So these are honest, real ingredients. It's simple. Delicious doesn't need to be complicated. And also, it has to be made from the heart. I cook because I love it. I love feeding people like you, like what you said on your former episode. So that's just it. There's nothing, you don't need to complicate real food, really.
I love that. That is amazing. And I think too, it's real food is minimally processed,
Yes.
not marketed to be something it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have, even if it's just as simple as a chicken breast with a light seasoning and some steamed vegetables, that's real food more than
Yes.
necessarily like a five-star, 5-star Michelin 7-course French dinner that is all this nonsense because
Mm.
you've put that together. You've put that chicken and vegetable in onto your plate by yourself or with a friend, and that's some of the best meals I've ever had was just me by myself making something, um,
Mm.
and not out of a box as our
Yes.
friend as noted YouTube celebrity chef That's What I Reckon says, fuck jar sauce.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Exactly. Exactly. I love him.
I got in trouble tonight watching one of his videos with my kids. Uh,
Why?
well,
Oh, the
my
extra
kids are
kids.
6 and 4, and he cusses quite a bit. And my wife came out and she said, "What are you watching?" I said, "He's just making carbonara, babe. Like, what do you want?" So everybody has their own cooking style, right?
Yes.
So why should, and our big tagline here on Foodball is humans
Mm-hmm.
cook. So why should humans cook to you?
Look, we're living on this earth that was given to us, and we're blessed to be alive being here. So we need to normally nourish ourselves all the time. We have to eat. So why not make what we eat delicious too? Right?
I
That's
can agree
that's
with that.
for me, that's just as simple as that.
I can agree with that. I can agree with that. Okay, so we've gone through my usual questions. We can kind of
Mm-hmm.
go on to the extended stuff if you've got time. I know we're kind of at our half an hour that
Sure.
we put on, but
No worries. It's morning, early morning here. It's all good. You have me.
okay. And you are semi-retired, so that's fine.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell us about your podcast, Human Thesaurus, which is one of my least
Mm-hmm.
favorite words to say because I know I have a slight list. It's one of my enemies. Why did you start that show?
I always have this concept in my head. I've met so many wonderful, interesting, intriguing, mysterious people in my career and in my personal life. So every time I sit down with someone or a few people, there's always a comment from myself. Oh, I could have recorded this, or everybody could have listened to this. So, and I marry that with my love of words. I love languages. I love words. English is my second language growing up, but I started speaking in English more since probably I was 4. And I'm always armed with encyclopedias and dictionaries because I love words. So now I married them together, two things that I love, people and words. So just to highlight these wonderful people that I came to know in a conversation format. So now I just felt that it's the right time to execute it. So I did this Human Thesaurus podcast to highlight humanity in the eyes of the experiences of my friends and marrying them with the words that I define them and they define themselves with. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful marriage.
I really like the concept because it's so different than anything I've seen.
Thank you.
Having joined the podcast community, it seems like there are pretty big wedges of things you can kind of categorize stuff. There's a lot of true crime.
Yes, I
Shocking.
love those.
I think what did South Park call it? Informative murder porn.
Oh,
That's
I love that.
yeah. So there's a lot of those, but yours when I found it, I was really intrigued because it's a very unique conceit. So for somebody who's never listened to you, kind of from that higher level description, like can you give us like an outline of kind of how the show works and why it's called Thesaurus and kind of how you mean by identify people with words?
Mm-hmm. So the format is very simple. It's a conversational interview. So it's not normally like interview per se, wherein I'm very much guarded and prepared with a list of questions and everything has to be answered. It's really more of I have these questions and I'm also led by the conversations that where the subject is going to lead into. So at first, I introduce the guests and how I describe them, how I met them, and I describe people as a noun, a word of a noun, a verb, and an adjective on how I describe them. And then they introduce themselves with the same thing. What do they describe themselves as? A noun, verb, and an adjective. What word they love and what word they dislike, and then those are the core. That's the core for me, those introductions, because you will reflect during the conversation that you will hear about why those words make sense to that person. So that's how it is. And then in the end, I provide another keyword that I picked up from the entire episode, explain that in different contexts, because sometimes we just take words for granted. They mean different things for different people too. So that's why these thesaurus or synonyms are very important, because it gives more context to that word. It gives more color, more flair to that. So that's the entire context of the entire podcast.
I really like the structure. Like I said, it's really intriguing, and you make a good point about words having meaning to people, that I think a
Yes.
lot of folks maybe don't really interact with as much as they should. And
Mm,
I know you did a recent episode about embracing the mother tongue, embracing your mother tongue, and
yes.
what it means to be Filipino. And so how do you like those words that you use for people? How do you feel? Because I know in English we don't really have
Mm-hmm.
a lot of undefinable phrases in other languages, things we pretty much are kind of are what they are. And everybody has idioms. But as far as
Mm-hmm.
food, I feel like we don't really have like a cheeseburger is a cheeseburger. It's a burger with cheese. Like it's not, there's no like symbolism or layered meanings. But I know
Right.
the more that we, the more that we together as an audience and you and me as individual cooks kind of learn about cooking and cooking styles around the world and food, um, I think that other languages and other cultures other than America have
Mm-hmm.
really interesting, specific kind of ways that food and their language intercept, like mala in Sichuan in China
Mm-hmm.
is, numbing heat. So it's the combination of chilies and Szechuan peppercorn.
Yes.
Things like fra diavolo in Italian. It's one of my favorite dishes, which I can't make at home because everybody in my house hates spicy food. Uh, it's a really spicy tomato and tomato sauce with shrimp.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
there's kalua is Hawaiian. I don't speak Hawaiian. That's probably pronounced terrible. That's cooking in an underground oven. I guess what most people would think of as like a luau. And so
Mm-hmm.
what, meandering, getting to the question, how
Mm-hmm.
do you feel, native languages other than English and other than America, like Tagalog specifically,
Yeah.
how do you feel that they express their ideas about food?
So, in general, right, with embracing this mother tongue and applying them to cooking, I just believe that language and culture is embraced by and is reflected by cuisines from the beginning of the civilization, most probably. So there's cooking is creative. So there's that creative flair to have that different, distinct complexities of taste, and you equate that to the spirit of the dishes, of the local dishes, because there are in different cuisines there are similarities to the method or the influence or how you mix them. So I think when you add the local languages that connects to the spirit of that dish in that particular cuisine, really makes sense to really describe or to be proud of your national dishes that you have. So I feel that these descriptions would give that, let's say, territorial identity for these dishes. So America may not have it, but it's borrowing from mostly the French or the Latin type of flair on
Mm,
how you would describe food, because again it's another melting pot of cultures. So you mix, like, some of the names are Mexican or Spanish or Chinese. It's just because there are so many immigrants in the United States or anywhere in the world. Like, sometimes I would go to, really, you think you're in the butt fuck nowhere of somewhere in Europe, and then there's a little Chinese restaurant, and you're
mm.
like, what? But yeah, so that's how international or global we are. We're at
Sure.
that. So yeah, so those words just adds identity to these different dishes.
If you haven't heard about Anker by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anker has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, which, trust me, is a lot easier than using a super complicated, super expensive audio editing software. When hosting on Anker, you can distribute your podcast on every listening platform you can think of, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. It's everything you need to make your podcast all in one place. And best of all, Anker is totally free. Download the Anker app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Yeah, and I think too, as far as identity goes, we in America, I think sometimes forget that we are new on the scene.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to make a port visit in Marseille, in France in the
Nice.
springtime, which apparently was the worst time to be there, weather-wise. But
Yeah.
I realized that walking up these streets and down these areas in Marseille, that some of those streets and drives were older than the United States.
Yeah.
Some of the sculptures there were 400 years old or 500 years old, and
Mm.
we haven't had as much of a long history, and we do like white Americans don't. Native Americans do, and we've
Right.
largely ignored it,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
is a whole different thing. I
Mm.
am very anti-colonial, obviously, and you mentioned being in the Philippines and that having a strong Spanish influence there, obviously
Yes.
because colonization was there for so long, and I think something too about people making things like a banh mi. Like a banh mi is a big deal, and
Mm.
and I have to ask people like, why is a banh mi served on a baguette? And they have no idea. It's like, oh, it's
It's
because
the
of
influence of the French in Vietnam.
exactly.
Yes.
And so things like using, I think the native languages also themselves become a living thing too, because you
Yes.
have indigenous cultures and then invading cultures, and then something
Mm.
comes out of that, and it's like a
Yes.
child. It's not exactly either of the parents. It's its own thing. And I think we in America have struggled with that because the melting pot is so big that
Mm.
we have a Chinese restaurant in every little bumfuck town everywhere, but they're all bad. Like they're all bad because that's what white people think Chinese food is.
Right.
And
Yes.
it's so frustrating for those of us who know better about food and are not
Mm.
foodies, because I hate that term, but people who
Uh-oh.
I hate that term. I hate it, and we'll get to it about why that is in a minute. But I feel like people that know a little bit more about food than the average food consumer, we get frustrated
Mm.
because for various reasons or whatever reason, that is the emblematic example of Chinese food to the majority of people in this country. And a
Yes.
tortilla, meat, and beans that is lukewarm and slightly chewy on
Oh.
the outside is what
Oh.
Mexican food is to every person in America. And that is not only a disservice to those of us eating it, it's a disservice to people to their culture.
Yeah.
Like if everybody, and
Yeah.
I am Irish, I think my middle name is Seamus, and the joke is
Yes.
that Irish and British food are gross, and that's fine
That's not
because, and it's not
true.
true. It's not true. Like I have had incredibly good Irish food, and Irish food has a
Exactly.
long history, and it's not all potatoes. And the potatoes
Absolutely.
were the fault of the British to begin with. So if
No,
you want to
that's
be mad at
another
anybody,
thing.
yeah, if you want to be mad
The
at anybody, be
potatoes.
mad at the English.
Yeah, and even potatoes are even foreign to the British,
Yeah, they're
to the
South
British
American, for
Isles.
Christ's sake. Like, so I
Yeah.
feel like if that were me, if I were not white, I would feel even more upset, because like that is not what a taco is. That is not what
Mm.
Sichuan food is. That is not what I'm sure even like Filipino and Thai, like everything that's quote exotic is just that sometimes can be a watered down version of itself to please the
Yeah.
masses. And I think
Yes.
you lose. And one of the things, like going back to Uncle Roger, one of the things he tries to get across is like curry is not a specific group of seasonings that you can buy at a grocery store. Curry
Exactly.
is a technique. It's you curry something. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
getting even just basic things about calling things what they are, and
Mm.
what food terms mean and what ingredient names mean, is I
Yes.
think a huge step in making progress as a consumer of food and a creator of food. Is you have to
Mm.
know, like you said, you have to know and respect your ingredients, and I really like that. So are you ready for a pop quiz? Speaking of things you should know as a cook.
Oh, golly gee.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
surprising you with this one. I didn't tell you there was going to be a pop
Oh,
quiz.
my golly.
So
Okay.
this is a quiz from what'sfordinner.com. because I would not subject you to BuzzFeed, because BuzzFeed is an affront to all that is holy. This quiz is called 25 Culinary Terms Every Foodie Should Know.
Ooh, every
so I'm gonna
foodie?
every foodie should know. So after the quiz, we'll talk about the term foodie. So I'm gonna just go down the list and see if you can define the terms. And I have not read this yet, so it'll be a surprise to me too.
Oh, cool.
So we'll put you on the spot. I will honestly say if I knew what it was or not.
Okay.
So you can trust me. This is an honor system because I'm the one reading it. Number one is al dente.
Yes, it's firm for pasta mostly.
Perfect. To the tooth in Italian. The only way to cook pasta. Thank you very much. 2, au gratin.
It's for the cheese, so it's grated. Au gratin.
Yeah, so I'll give it to you because it is cheese related. I didn't know specifically what this is either. It says covered with breadcrumbs and or cheese and baked until golden brown. Traditionally, a shallow baking dish is used.
I make au gratin, but I didn't know the literal.
Okay, yeah, I could tell you that's the name of a dish, but I didn't know it was a technique. So that's okay. I got you.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Number 3 is bard.
Spell?
B-A-R-D.
No, I haven't done that technique, so I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I have no idea.
What is bard?
I hear bard. I think either Dungeons and Dragons or Shakespeare.
Or a name of a big guy.
Yeah.
Hey, bard.
Yeah. To tie fat around lean meats to prevent them from drying out during the cooking process.
Oh, makes sense.
So I guess like a bacon,
word.
Yeah. Okay, so I've learned a new technique. I guess that's kind of like a bacon wrapped shrimp. Or a bacon wrapped pork tenderloin. Okay. Or I didn't know there was a term for that.
So pretty much when you wrap bacon in something, it's a bard.
Okay. I can be down. It sounds really fancy.
Awesome.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay. Baste is next.
B-A-S-T-E, right?
Yep.
Is to coat something, for example, that you're roasting with its own juices.
Indeed. That's 101 stuff. 5 is blanch.
Blanch is to heat, steam, or boil something. For example, vegetables very quickly, like 5 seconds.
Perfect.
And then you put them in a cold water after.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that I think people forget sometimes is the shock. Really good for green beans. Keeps them nice and bright.
Oh, absolutely.
Number 6 is a bouquet garni.
Bouquet garni is a little bag full of different herbs, mostly herb provençal, like French herbs, thyme, oregano. Oh my gosh, thyme, oregano, marjoram. But excellent. It's just mostly 5 spices from France.
Very nice. Very nice. I used a bouquet garni for the very first time this weekend when I made the ratatouille.
Yay!
And I went a little crazy. I used savory. Which I had forgotten was an actual herb. Number 7, braise.
Braise is same as like stew. Oh my gosh!
I'll take stew.
Yeah.
It says to brown or sear in fat and then cook at low heat in liquid.
Exactly.
So I would call that. I would say that stewing and braising are interchangeable. There may be some folks out there who would be even more pedantic than I am. But would allow
Thanks
that.
for your forgiveness.
See, I'm the host. I get to do these things. Number 8 is brine.
Brine is when you put a protein or anything into what do you call that? A salty liquid, or to give it extra flavor.
Excellent. Number 9 is butterfly.
Butterfly is when you spread a protein into something thinner, like you butterfly a chicken. You cut it in a way that it would spread out so it could cook evenly.
Nicely done. Often used for like pork chops, chicken breasts to stuff them,
Veal.
things like that.
Yeah.
And number 10, I know it said 25, but we're going a little long, so I'm going to stop it at 10.
Okay.
Just because this is a fun word for me to say, and I did not know it. Number 10 is coddle.
Coddling. Huh? Coddle?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's a technique for, it's like poaching.
Yes. Okay. So then, if one were keeping score at home, that would mean you are the winner. Because we both didn't know the one about Bard, and we both knew all the other ones. I didn't know Coddle. There you go. I would think of it. I think of it as like coddling your children, protecting them from stress.
Yeah.
I guess
the same.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. It says to heat food, usually eggs, in water just below the boiling point. Usually takes longer than boiling or poaching, but produces a more tender result.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So sometimes sometimes I coddle eggs in sous vide.
So you're a sous videer?
I'm not a hardcore hipster sous videer.
Okay.
I just think that sous vide again adds or retains moisture and texture in a different light to different proteins. It's very interesting to have that kind of technique.
Okay.
But I don't sous vide everything, okay?
So you've never sous vided like a pie?
No. Some things are we just need to leave some things the way they are. They're already beautiful on their own.
I could not agree more. I have been, since I have become kind of awoke about food, I have been very leery of the latest technologies. We were gifted an Instant Pot a couple of years ago. And I have literally only used it to make chicken and beef stock because it is a legitimate time saver. And I've made stock the regular way, and it comes out exactly the same, just not in 16 hours. And it's a lot. So that I can say it is a legitimate time saver, and I will use it for that. I would never have bought it on my own. Just like now we don't own an air fryer. I know the air fryer is the biggest thing happening right now. And I won't be talked into it. And I will not buy an immersion circulator for sous vide. I am not going to do it. I have a buddy of mine who espouses its virtues, and it's so amazing, and and my stubborn old man is like, if you cooked it properly, you wouldn't have to worry about whether you could keep it for 7 hours in a bag of water. Like, come on.
It's a good technique, but it's not as cooks, right? Everybody would have different preferences. Like for me, I love Instant Pot, but I have my kick-ass pressure cooker. So that's what I use. So it's really like, some people are scared of cooking because also with all of these names and techniques and tools, it's like, no, start from the beginning. What are you comfortable with?
Right.
So because everybody's like, oh, I need to follow, like I need to have an air fryer. Everybody's got an air fryer. Are you really gonna use it? So so it's all about that, right?
And that's how you end up air frying popcorn and making a giant fucking mess because air fryers are not for popcorn. But you bring up I think you bring up a good point though, is people, and it's something that one of the evils of society that I am aiming to fix with this show is people thinking that cooking is scary. and
Yeah.
that in order to make something delicious or healthy, or God forbid, even both, they have to have some sort of fancy equipment or, ridiculous skill. And I hate to compare it to math because everybody has opinions of math one way or the other. But the way that I was taught math is it was cumulative. It was the things you learned in year 7, you then applied in year 8, and then you applied in year 8 to year 9, and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
So that way, because trying to get it all at once is a nightmare.
Yes.
But you learn. So, I think that cooking should be approached the same way as, start the basics, boil water, learn how to cook protein so you don't get sick and die. And then you can go, don't try to jump in and like make a Thai green curry or make a paella or, name a crazy thing. But like, don't start there. That's a silly place to start because you're gonna fuck it up and you're not gonna like it, and then you're never gonna cook again. But if you can master like making a 4-ingredient spaghetti sauce and cooking your noodles right, and it's so much better than jar sauce, no matter how cheap the jar sauce is. The gap in quality is so much greater than even you think. So and that's what frustrates me about calling things what they are, because people don't learn. I feel like they don't learn. They say, well, you can cook cauliflower rice just like rice. No, you can't. No. It is not the same thing. They are fundamentally made of different shit. And if you treat them the same way, it's not going to work.
Exactly.
Call it grated cauliflower. You are disrespecting cauliflower. You are disrespecting rice because, they're not the same thing. I've always kind of had an issue with like a veggie burger. It's not a burger. Call it a patty. Burger has connotations. Burger has connotations. You don't call it a chicken burger. You call it a chicken patty. You don't call it a fish burger. It's a fish sandwich or a fish fillet
sandwich. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So why do you do it with veggie? Why do you call it a veggie burger? Because you're trying to create a perception that it is a replacement. It's not a replacement, and that's why people don't like it, and that's why they don't buy it. It's if you market, I feel like if you called it what it is and didn't try to make it something it's not, it would be more successful. As a general rule for substitutions and alternative types of food that are available out there, I think, and I do marketing for a living. Marketing is evil. It's evil. Yes. And it lies, and it's there for the bottom line and the bottom line only. So I worry that if companies and food processors discovered that if you called it a veggie sandwich or a veggie patty and quit trying to beat people over the head with this is just as good as a beef burger, it's not, and it never fucking will be. But
exactly.
If you give them like, this is a delicious sandwich item that you can put on a bun and treat like a burger, I think you might have better success. What do you think? And is that a thing just in America? Like, do you see that over in the other side of the globe at all? Is that a thing that happens?
Yeah, everywhere. I've traveled a lot, and that happens now because, like what you said, it's marketing. But we just needed to really go back to basics and call them what they are. They're more straightforward. They're less intimidating, and they may sound less gross, because if you've eaten so many things, and especially like for people who's got conditions, let's say someone just developed a celiac disease, they didn't have it before, so they have to switch their diets, right? And then when they know their entire lives a hamburger, and then they would see a vegetable burger, they're still not going to eat it. They're going to have a miserable time at the restaurant. So that's the hard part. It's the commercialism of some of these things make them try to ride the wave of what they think makes sense to other people. So that's another thing, assumption. Sure. A lot of commercialism derives on assumption of, or even telling people what they need. So unfortunately, we can't stop them. But I also believe that there's this genuine food revolution, like you starting this podcast. A lot of people, a lot of authentic cooks have their little channels on TikTok, on Instagram, who's really showing, hey, you can cook with these four ingredients and it's so easy. You can do this in 15 minutes. And that inspires a lot of people. We're not going to win all the time, but we just need to start with ourselves, like us who love cooking, to just influence out there, friends, family first, whoever, right? That's the best we can do to improve the society, pretty much.
I could not have said it better myself. I think that the perception here in the West is that they're trying to anticipate where the next food trend is going to be. And right now, I think anybody with eyes can see that it's plant-based. And that's what the marketing is around, things like plant-based rice. Rice is a fucking plant, people. Like, I shouldn't have to tell you that. And they shouldn't, and they, whoever makes the plant-based rice, I don't remember, but they should not be able to charge you $6 for a bag of rice because it's called plant-based rice. It's a fucking plant already. It's not plant-based. It is a plant. Or even,
it's sad.
Yeah, and I am upset for the consumers, but I'm also just kind of mad at them because we have allowed these companies to do this to us in our lifetime. I'm assuming that you and I are around the same age in our 30s, 40s.
No, I'm older than you. I think
I do not
early 40s.
Okay, well, we're in the same ballpark. We have seen in various levels from when I was a kid, fats were bad. And so everything was low fat. I enjoyed the hell out of Olestra Pringles, like the zero fat, taste just like the real thing, chips and things. And I experienced the anal leakage from this fake fat compound. Oh yeah. It was were those ever marketed overseas?
What the fuck? What is that?
Yeah, so in the late 90s, a compound was created called Olestra. And Olestra. Okay. And they found that it was basically a fat replacement in the production of food. Oh god. So they rushed out, got it FDA approved, but the FDA, during the testing, they found that it caused some severe gastrointestinal problems in a not insignificant number of the test subjects. But they realized that they could sell full flavor, zero fat, like potato chips. So the Frito-Lay company basically trademarked it and put out full flavor, zero fat Lay's classic potato chips and Pringles and Doritos and Ruffles and all these other Disney brand chips. Oh my god, and they were delicious. They were delicious. They were exactly the same as the full fat counterpart. Because the way that the diet and the way that food culture in the 90s was at that time, that was fats are evil. All fats are bad. You should have no fat at all. It doesn't matter what else is in your food as long as you don't have fat. And so then they had these warnings on all the chip containers, like all it said was may cause anal leakage.
Wow.
Yeah, it was basically like uncontrollable diarrhea.
Holy cow.
Because it was like a cholesterol substitute. So it went zipped right through you like a wet drain pipe.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, I've learned something here. Because us Filipinos, we love friggin' fats. We don't give a shit. We eat fucking fat. Like pork is holy to us. Or yeah, we don't care about those things. I think it just got we caught on though with the fat-free stuff later on. We always follow the Western world. So everybody's like, oh, everything has to be fat free. Yogurt has to be fat free. Some people probably need it with high cholesterol, but there are good cholesterols out there. They're not
Sure.
bad. So yeah. So I grew up being encouraged to just eat whatever is on the table. So if there's like a fatty pork chop there, I just munch it all up. I love it. But again, different this predisposition for other people as well. So that's why it's good to cook because you can control what you put in your food.
Exactly. And that's my biggest thing too, is that if you cook and have agency over what you eat, the only person you can blame for any if they even exist health conditions caused by your food is you. The only person you blame is yourself. You can't blame.
Exactly.
And so like me, I have incredibly high cholesterol. Like I shouldn't be walking around. My arteries should essentially be like an erector set made of stainless steel.
Oh my
But
gosh.
my cardiologist, and I have a cardiologist at 36 years old, my
Mm.
cardiologist says the numbers that my cholesterol are at are not in any way achievable by diet or lack of exercise. It is a genetic, like my body just produces an inordinate amount of bad cholesterol. And
Mm.
I just recently, about a year ago, found out about this and started on
Oh.
hardcore cholesterol medication. And that is the only thing. I could eat nothing but 1,000 grains of whole grain every day and never eat meat or fat ever again. And I would still have a cholesterol level of insane
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
medication. And so that's something that it's an anecdote and it's only me, but we followed in the West, we followed the fats are evil cycle, which then turned the dial into the carbs are evil cycle,
Mm.
which was Atkins, and you can
All
have
right.
47 pounds of bacon, but don't have,
Yeah.
a banana because it has carbs in it. So that was the next evolution, and the wheel turned again. And now we've turned the wheel again to all proteins are bad, or all meats are bad, and all animal
Mm.
products are bad. So everything
Yeah.
should be plant-based and everything should
Plant-based.
be almond milk. And don't get me started about why almond milk is terrible for the environment.
It is bad.
It's
Yes.
still not as bad as cow milk, but it's pretty damn close.
Yeah.
So then if you follow these trends on a large macro enough scale, eventually we're going to have to, there's only three things. There's carbs, proteins,
Mm.
and fat. So like
Yes.
eventually the wheel's going to turn back around and we're going to go back to fat is bad again. And we're already kind of there because meats and animals are bad. So you can see if you
Yeah.
approach it on this high level kind of look, it's a big fucking cycle. So like you
Yes.
said, if you and as a marketer, that's a
Yes.
cycle. So you get out ahead of it in order to be the first one, like Olestra, to make every penny you can off of it before it switches back. But like you
Mm.
said, if we take agency over what we buy and what we cook and how we eat it, we don't have to be subjected to that as much. Like now, I don't have to buy plant-based rice because I buy rice. Like my wife just found out she might have to go gluten-free for a medical condition, not for celiac, but for something else. And
Mm.
thankfully, I know enough about food and about gluten and about what is gluten. Things like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm so glad these potato chips are gluten-free. They're fucking potatoes. They've always been gluten-free. That's not a new thing. Like you shouldn't have to label your bottle of or like your bag of chocolate or not chocolate, maybe that's a bad example, but you know what I mean, like a bag of strawberries. This bag of strawberries is gluten-free. Fucking strawberries have always been gluten-free.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. Dude, they're in because I normally visit in California. My family's there. So I found this bottled water. It says gluten free. I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Exactly.
Seriously?
And
I
people
can't get
buy
over
it. People would buy it. There would be somebody in the water aisle
Wow.
looking for the gluten-free water. I promise you.
Oh, Oh God.
Because marketing is evil, and marketing gets you things like our seasoning blend has no MSG, but you know what it does have a shit ton of? Salt.
Yes.
Like, which I love
Yum.
salt. I put fucking kosher salt on everything. But I also understand that like I shouldn't drown things in it. And if
Yes.
that's why I don't buy seasonings that have I don't usually buy seasoning blends to begin with because I'm a pedant and I want to make them at home. But if I
Yes.
do find one that I really like, I definitely always make sure it doesn't already have salt in it, because then you can't adjust the level of salt in the rest of the stuff. And some people like, I like my stuff a little saltier, which I'm
Yeah.
sure is tied to my abnormally mutant level of cholesterol. But my wife doesn't like so much salty, so we can adjust, and I can do that. But just calling
Yeah.
things what they are and not making a big deal out of things they're not is just such a
Mm.
huge issue and I'm both gladdened and depressed to find out that it's not just a United States thing. Like it's everywhere.
No, it's not. It's everywhere. I mean, we're a very global world now. Everybody's very much connected. That these things just seep through everywhere. They have their own ways, but it's all about going back. It's all about words. It's all about words that marketing people use that makes other people either buy into it or get repelled by the things that
Mm-hmm.
they see in the supermarket. But I suppose I just implore everyone to just use their common sense in terms of their own diet. The best diet in the world is a balanced diet. You get to know your body and you nourish it with the right things. You can have fats, but eat vegetables too, and just explore ingredients. They're beautiful. There's so many amazing things out there.
Before we get back to it, I just wanted to interject a quick note about foodball and ads. I make you, the listeners, this solemn vow. I will never try to sell you a product or service I have not personally used or tasted and approve of. The only exceptions to this will be products used by cooks I trust, so the trust carries down to you like a little trust waterfall. I do have an Amazon affiliate marketing account, so if you do happen to buy stuff from the links I put in the episode descriptions, you are directly supporting the podcast. Other than that, I promise to maintain full transparency regarding advertisements and products mentioned during the show. I will never schlep something I don't believe in, a company I don't wholeheartedly support, or even a podcast I don't listen to and enjoy. I believe the relationship between a creator and their community is built primarily on trust. And because I work in marketing, I know firsthand how that trust can be misused and abused in the name of profit. That's not what I'm doing here. All proceeds go to the show, whether it's new equipment or stuff I've always wanted to cook with that I'll share with you. If it sucks, I'll tell you, and I won't take another dime. We're in this together. We're all humans who cook, and I hope I've earned your trust.
Absolutely. And I think too, I've been starting to read a lot more, there are like the Inuit who eat basically nothing but fat and protein. They don't
Mm,
have the same levels of what they call the Western diseases,
yes.
heart disease and diabetes and obesity and high blood pressure and things like that. And, I think balanced is a good general starting point.
Mm,
I think knowing yourself, like you said, is the biggest thing. Is if you
yes.
genuinely don't like a specific food or type of food, and you've given it an honest try in a number of ways, and you just don't like it, that's fine. Like you are
Mm,
100%. If you really just don't like vegetables, and you've tried and tried and tried and tried, and you don't like them, and you've never found one that you like, if you feel that you've given yourself, enough opportunities, then fine. Like I'm not going to judge you for it. But I feel like because I was raised in a house of try it at least once and then you can say,
mm,
you don't like it. I was also terrified of my grandmother, so I was never really comfortable saying I didn't like it. So I ate a lot of foods I didn't like because I was scared of her and I didn't want to make her angry or disappointed. I didn't want to disappoint her.
Yeah.
But I'm the same way with my kids. Like, please just try it. I know you're a kid.
Yes.
I've done research. I know how your taste buds work. I know you don't like bitter compounds. I'm going to try to cook these vegetables to get them as little bitter as I can. And here's Brussels sprouts that are basically bathing in pork belly. Please eat them because I know you like bacon. And those worked, like stuff like that.
Yes.
But like, as far as I think diets and the concept of a diet is bullshit, because science has proven they're bullshit, and people don't eat that way. Like, people in all of human history, there was nobody in like Mesopotamia who said, I'm feeling a little peckish, let's cut out fish for the next 30 days. Or, this bread is making my ass look fat, I need to just eat, parsley for the next 3 weeks. That's not a thing, because if you did that, you died. Like, you died. You ate what was available. Yeah, you were unhappy. And people on diets are chronically pissed because their bodies are saying, why are you doing this to me?
Exactly.
If your body, and it has to, I feel like, so there's an old legend about the advertising business, and I don't remember if it's anywhere close to true or not, but deodorant was a product without a solution. People didn't know that they had body odor. That was just what people smelled like. And then somebody invented deodorant, and then somebody invented deodorant and said, and it was primarily, the story goes, it was primarily marketed at the beginning to women that said, you smell badly and your husbands know it. So if you want your husband, or if you don't have one, if you want to get a husband, you better use this underarm perfume. And then people like, oh my God, we smell like shit. And then they started buying perfume and deodorant. And now you have to buy deodorant. Like, it's a necessary hygiene thing, because over the course of 2 or 3 generations, we were taught by advertising that BO is bad. And we were raised that way. And that may never have been, because like, there's, and obviously I'm not a history professor. Like, there are notices of like perfumed oils and things from way far in human civilization. But as far as everybody's required to wear this chemical because you're supposed to be ashamed of the way you smell in your natural processes, like, that's how evil and insidious advertising is. So things like gluten-free water, or plant-based rice, or Prime, or Supreme, or Ultimate, none of these fucking words mean anything. They legally do not mean a damn thing, and you can call whatever you want. So, and I think the only way that you're exactly right, the only way that any of that's ever going to change is if home cooks stand up and fucking do something about it, and say something about it, and say, we're not going to buy your bullshit products anymore. Do I think that's going to happen in any great number? No. Because nothing can be counted on more than the stupidity of human beings in large enough groups. But I think we just have to weather this current storm of plant-based nonsense. And I'm not touching on the concept of a vegan diet, or the morality or lack thereof, or environmental impacts. Like, I think any reasonably smart person in the world knows that farming is bad, or farming animals and industrial processes is bad. It's cruel to the animals. It's cruel to the environment. I don't think eating meat is inherently immoral. I think animals are delicious. Otherwise, we wouldn't eat them and cook them. I think what is done to the large number of, to the overwhelming majority of food animals in this planet is inherently cruel. Yes. But those two things can be true at the same time. Like, they're not mutually exclusive. Yeah. Like, chicken is delicious. Chicken farming is evil. Like, those two things can be true at the same time.
Yes.
So but then what makes me mad, though, is that trying to find locations that do sustainable farming and that do humane practices are by nature almost prohibitively expensive. We have eggs we're lucky enough to live in the Midwest of the US, where we have bountiful eggs and farms and places to grow things. And I can go 10 miles down the road and get a dozen legit free range. I'm looking at the chickens laying the egg. But it's $12 a dozen. It's $1 an egg because of their food costs and because of how they run their business. And I can't afford that. That is absurd. I am not economically able to do that. And if I'm not, and that's why we have an issue in this country in that industrialized, processed, unhealthy food is so much cheaper and so much more widely available that people don't know. And we have food desert problems, and it's exacerbated by not calling food what it is or calling it something it's not.
Yes. And the food wastage as well is a massive issue. Every time I'm there, I could only eat. I eat at least 5 meals a day at a small amount each because that's what my body could handle. That's how I nourish myself. So every time I go there, you order a massive, big ass amount of thing, but you only eat a quarter of it. So that's really I'm ashamed of that. So it's really hard. But also on the positive notes, for example, in Australia and New Zealand, they're trying to achieve a lot of zero carbon or carbon neutral farms. And like what you said, they're extra expensive, but there are also different governments who would give some subsidies to these people, like, for example, lesser taxation, etc. So they give them support because it's something that's very important. And I've seen as well in the U.S. that there are farms that are trying to do this. And again, these food movement, it's not going to be perfect. We're not going to influence a lot a lot of people, but we could only hope because again, at the end of the day, we could target the people who are willing to also listen and realize their food journey on their own. And that's what we can do. For you start with your kids. For me, I just feed people around me with the best food that I can, the simplest but the most delicious food that I can. And it starts from there. And a lot of us would be doing this, and I could see a lot of people are doing this, and this is the best that we can do.
I think that's so important is just we have to be, I joke all the time about, to vegans or whoever, like your choice to be vegan is not going to save the planet. I am a pragmatist. And so on the other side, me choosing to be an aware cook and an aware diner is not going to save food culture. So, it's a tough fight, and it's something that you kind of have to buckle yourself in for. But I think the more that people like us communicate with each other, and the more that we can communicate to the people that we want to reach, I think the conversation can move forward, because I know even from the last 10 years, I can, there's a huge sea change in the good side of food culture and where it's moving to, supporting small independent locations and restaurants. And, I know a lot of people make fun of the fork to, or the farm to table movement, but the food is better. Like, it's legitimately better. If nothing else, if you're doing it for nothing else, do it for better fucking food. And it is like I feel bad that like somebody my age has never really had a glass of milk, or
oh my goodness,
we've never had real cheddar cheese because of the walls and the valleys that are put in place between us and where our food comes from. I know I went out of my way to teach my preschool age children that meat comes from animals. So they wouldn't have a moment of shock when they're like, oh, my chicken nugget used to be Mr. Clucky. Like, yes, chickens are not nugget shaped, and here's how they make them. They put them through a grinder and all this stuff. Like, because I've heard stories of that, of people's kids like freaking out and at 10 years old, like deciding to become vegetarian because like they have a pet pig or whatever. They are very well aware of exactly what part of the pig their bacon comes from and how it's made. And I wish that I had been, educated like that as a kid, because I feel like I would have grown up with more respect for my food and with more respect for not only the people that made it, but the people that cooked it and the people that grew it and the people who took care of it. So I think, something, I really hate that you called me like a revolutionary, like I'm some sort of kitchen bound Che Guevara. That's going to be my first merch t-shirt is a face.
Wow.
It's a cartoon representation of me as Che on the shirt, because I'm that much of a narcissist. But I can blame you for it. But yeah, I think these, like, if we can have these kinds of conversations and, disagree about some things, sure. But
yeah,
I think have just like, did you know this? And we learned a new culinary term. And we, we're finding out that there are differences in where we are and what we eat, but there's not an unbridgeable gap. I didn't know that our obsession with naming things and gluten-free had been as widespread as it is. I thought it was just an American problem. So I think if we can have more of these kinds of conversations and make food and eating less abstract, I think we can start to make those kind of strides.
Yes, that's right. And if you have a chance to travel either within the States or in Europe, you will always find authentic food. Look for them. They're there to explore and to understand. So even when I was in Texas or New Orleans or in the rest of Louisiana, I go to these places to understand what their real cuisine is and where they came from, and have an understanding and learning from their spices or what's their technique. And because food is happiness, you have to enjoy it. So if you're miserable eating gluten-free something, unless you're really got a celiac problem, just readjust and have a different type of mindset, right? And for you, Zach, I called you revolutionary because again, this food revolution should not just be coming from chefs or celebrity chefs or chefs that you see in media. It has to be coming from us, the normal people, everyday people who had this awakening about food. It starts from us. It starts from each and everyone, everyday people who love to cook, to influence other people to eat better. Right?
That is, I'm writing down these t-shirt slogans like 1,000%. The revolution starts in the kitchen, in the home kitchen.
Yes, absolutely.
We will take back the plant-based rice. We will take back the veggie patty. Call shit what it is.
It is, yes.
And on that note, I would like to say thank you so much for joining us. This has been I could not have asked for a better first interview. I sincerely appreciate your time. Especially I'm hoping you're getting some good coffee there in the morning in Singapore.
Totally.
if you would like to plug yourself, if you would like followers, I know you wrote a book. Is that right?
Yes, I wrote a book that was last year. It's called A Fraction of Momentary Love. It's a poetry book. It's all about everybody else's secret that I can't tell, and I tell them in a poetic mode. And also, it's all about different emotions. There are gaps in our emotions, and we all feel differently, but we all feel the extremes of them. either extreme joy and extreme happiness, extreme sadness and depression, and all of these different wide range of things. So I wrote all of my poems in that sense, that it would make sense to you, at least one of them. And I love poetry because you can interpret it differently, different readers, different interpretations. So yeah, so that's my book. I love it very much as well. That's why I have to put it out in the universe. I thought it's just going to be personally mine, but now it's out there. A Fraction of Momentary Love.
Excellent. And I will put, because I'm your friend, I will put a link to your book in the episode description, which may or may not give me a smidgen of money from Amazon. Just saying, I have to be clear about that. I am excited.
Let me find out. You should have like a affiliate link. Yeah, I'll get that for you.
Excellent. See, I like to do things above board. I am, again, super grateful that you came on and took the plunge in being my first guest. Where can folks find you on Twitter and Instagram, and God forbid Facebook?
Well, everything is the same for me. It's at Wish Bliss. That's WISHBLIZZ. Everywhere.
Excellent. And for those of us in the US, that is Z there on the end. I have always, as someone whose first name starts with one, I always liked Zed a little bit better. But what can you do? Well, Wish, thank you so much again last time for being with us. Everybody, you have been listening to Foodball and my guest, Wish Ronquillo Peacocke. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.